Hey, listen, before we get into today's episode, let me ask you this. When's the last time you had a proper break? Whether you're a truckie, a shift worker, a parent, or just here for the laughs. We know you're working bloody hard just to keep the wheels turning, and that's why our mates at Nature Bee want to send you on the holiday of a lifetime. We're talking $20,000 worth of travel anywhere in the world. You name it. Fiji, Vegas, the Outback, Rome, Paris, London, doesn't matter. New York, you choose. Stick with us because only Bonafide listeners get the inside scoop on double entry weeks, exclusive offers, and a lot more. So hit the link in the show notes or head to naturebee.com. Read the T's and C's, and I'll tell you more as we roll on throughout the episode of Bonafide, also made possible thanks to Nature Bee.
Drive safe tonight. Drive left-hand side.
Well, here we go with another Truckie Tuesday where we talk all things transport, all things roads, and a little bit political again this morning with some really interesting topics and some great feedback. Rod Hannafy, good morning or good afternoon or good evening or whatever time it is. G'day.
G'day, Mr. Boner. How are you?
How's your week been, all right?
Oh, all right. Had a fairly big week, 5,500 K, and ended up down to Melbourne, back to Brisbane, back to Melbourne. And the last couple of days were a bit stressful because I virtually ended up with half an hour's leeway to get home because of our 14-day rule. I've spoken to the NTC, I've left a message with the NHVR, and what it means is what you did 14 days ago decides when you must be home. No leeway, no tolerance, and I made it with about 20 minutes to spare, so that was all right.
Now, Rod, there's a bit of news we'll get through in the course of production today, and one of them's a really sad story. It's the story of a young father of 4 who was killed in a horror crash in the state's Central West after the B-double he was driving crashed and it burst into flames. His name was Kurt Finnerty, who is a well-known local truck driver. And, yes, he tragically died. Now, one of our listeners, Brad, messaged us during the week. Kurt was his best friend, and he's obviously distraught by all this. But also, we have another special guest, and this is a bloke that I'm sure you're keen to talk to, Rod. His name is Josh. He drives a purple-striped Kenworth and was the ATA Driver of the Year. And he's on the phone right now. Josh, welcome to Truckie Tuesday on the Bonafide podcast, and I'm sure you're keen to say good day to Rod. Rod, here's Josh.
Good morning, Josh. How are you, mate?
Good morning, good sir, Kelsey and Luke. How are we all?
We're great.
So, mate, as he said there, you're the not the current, but the previous ATA Driver of the Year. It's something that the ATA has been doing for probably more than 20 years now. Max Keogh was the very first ATA Driver of the Year. Whilst those people go through a fairly serious vetting process, they normally come down to a number of finalists and then someone gets chosen. You've got to have a record or good record on the road. You've got to have a record of doing more than simply driving a truck, doing something to improve the industry and to help other drivers. And congratulations on your award at the time, mate, but it's something that I've spoken to the ATA about. The state associations, of course, have Drivers of the Year, so QTA, VTA, and then those who win those awards automatically get a nomination for the following year's ATA Driver of the Year. So it's a small club, but a group of blokes that have obviously been very passionate. You and I have discussed how we might better utilise such passion, because certainly there's a lot of blokes out there, and not everybody gets to win the awards, and not everybody wants to. Some people don't sort of recognise it for what it is. It is recognition by your peers and those that have sort of looked at what's going on and what you've done. But it's something where those people have at least made an effort. They should be recognised. And you and I had a discussion there a few weeks ago. What we're going to try and do is get all those winners of all those awards together as a sort of a group. I'd like to call it the Knights of the Road. And that, if we can get them together and sort of do a bit of brainstorming, perhaps there's a way we can get your average driver, your bloke who's simply out there doing his job and thinks that that's all that's most important to have a little bit more passion, to give him somewhere to use it instead of sitting there thinking, oh, woe is me, I'm all out here on my own. And I think if we can find a way to harness that passion, there's a lot of drivers out there, maybe we could do some more good for the industry.
Yeah, look, absolutely, mate. I was very honoured to win the award back in 2024. So, yeah, and since then I've been able to progress further into I'd say behind the scenes stuff, not actually behind the wheel driving. And what you say is correct. It is a small group of people. I'm very honoured to be in that little group of people. It has opened up a lot of opportunities for myself. And what you say about getting those people who are award winners into some sort of a group to pass on that information is a great idea. As we know, the transport industry, its average age is up around, I think, 57 years old now as a full-time driver. Unfortunately, none of us are getting any younger, and it is hard for those people to pass on their information if they're not that way inclined. It's easy as a one-on-one thing with another driver. That's it's just a general conversation. Have you tried doing it this way or tried doing it that way? But getting those people to pass on that information to a larger minority of people is a challenge. And as you said, you and I have talked about different ways of doing it, and whether it's one-on-one instruction, whether it's going to be some sort of a video or, little short videos of just simply tips of restraining different things, or, driving tips, or your truckie's top 10 tips, things like that. I think that's the way to go. I've been very lucky. I was Army trained driver, so I was almost 15 years in the Army as a combat engineer, and got all my driving tickets through there and loaded all kinds of everything from just general freight on a flat top up to float and dolly, a big oversized stuff going all over the country. I've been on a lot of roads around the country, which is great. Yeah, up to Cape York and over to Weipa, up to the Dampier Peninsula. So it's not just driving around town. I'm lucky in that regard that I was a driving instructor within the Army as well. And I've also done a lot of driving stuff with the company I'm at now, Ross Transport. So the people that we talk to on a daily basis do have a lot of information to pass on. And, yeah, the way to do it, it's not set in concrete yet, but it's definitely a passion that I want to pass on before I hang up the driving gloves, so to speak.
Josh, can I just ask you this, and we've discussed this many times on this podcast, but I'm keen to hear a former ATA Driver of the Year's opinion. How do we encourage young Australians to get behind the wheel? We had Fergo on from Burke, a great little character, 14 years of age. How do we get more Fergos enthusiastic?
Well, you guys have mentioned it before. We have to capture them at their age before they decide later on in life where they're going to go in their career. Now, we have, the owners of Trucking Life. You've got Craig and Colette and Yogi and Amanda, who own Trucking Life magazine. They also do a juniors magazine called Little Trucker Down Under. That magazine is purely for the junior people that are looking into going into the industry. So there's stories about, going for a drive with their parents, or, school open days and all kinds of things that are in there. If we can capture them at that age, that 14, 12, 13, 14-year-old age, to say that being in the industry is not just driving a truck. There's all kinds of things. There's logistics, there's warehousing, there's forklift operators, there's yard managers, there's whether you want to work in the office, you might want to be a load allocator, you might want to be a load planner, you might want to do something in compliance. You don't necessarily have to be a truck driver. There's a massive, massive range of jobs within the industry, and you guys have talked before about it's not just driving one type of truck anywhere. There's hundreds of different jobs within the truck driving umbrella that's been talked about before, that you can get a pilot's license at 16 and you can fly solo at 16, but you can't get a forklift license until you're 18. Now, if you've been trained correctly and you have supervision, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to obtain a forklift license at the same time you obtain your learner driver's license. There's a lot of things going on in the background of the industry trying to get different rules and regulations changed. But as we know, it'll change overnight. But overnight means, 5 to 10 years, but we're trying. So yeah, definitely. If you're interested in a young age, that's where you're going to capture them.
Yeah, Rod?
Yes, and it's something that we've talked about and we've all thought about, but we haven't gone far enough. The apprenticeship scheme, again, we're closer to that being national than we ever have, and it's operating in formats in different states, but it's not yet there to be able to say you can go and do it in any state in Australia. So until we've got something like that, a structured path, as he said, it's really hard to get them. They don't recognise what's available. They go off and do something else. And, of course, once they've done that, we very rarely get them back, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the other problem I seem to hear, the feedback I get, is that if we don't encourage young Australians to become truck drivers, and without truck drivers the country grinds to a halt, that is to import drivers. And there is often criticism that imported drivers, well, they may say they have the qualifications, but they really don't, not to Australian conditions and road rules. And this is something I found fascinating. They've got a problem in New Zealand, and I don't want to target Indian drivers, but these are the facts. More heavy vehicle licences have been cancelled in New Zealand, and this is amid a crackdown on fraudulent activity. And all of the truck drivers affected so far are Indian. The New Zealand Transport Agency announced earlier this month it had revoked 440 licences after an audit discovered false or altered documentation had been used to convert them from foreign permits. And an investigation by the New Zealand Herald found that the number had risen to 459, and all the data shows that 436 were Indians. Indian drivers, Indian licenses converted from other countries like the United States, the United Arab Emirates, 18 from Australia, 5 from Canada. What do you make of this, both of you?
Look, Luke, I'm going to say we've discussed this in the past, and we know that people come to Australia because it's a bloody terrific place to live, and we understand they come here to feed their family. And if they're trained and if they pass the test, once they get out on the road, no matter where they come from, we have to help them. They're part of the industry. As you say, we can't supply the drivers on our own. And the people that own trucks, they're not earning a great deal of money when they're sitting parked in the backyard looking for a driver. But I've had 4 instances now. This only happened the other night coming home from Brisbane. Driving along, there's a truck sitting right up me clacker, and I mean less than a car distance behind me. So we see one spot, we get a bit of distance in the road. Old mate's got the indicator on. He's come out beside me. Truck turns up in the distance. He decides there's not enough room, and there certainly wasn't in the first place. That's okay. We get down the road a little bit. Again, he's right up the back of the truck. He's not backing off. He's sitting there right behind me. And then he puts the indicator on, and as he does, he says, "I come round." Now, I called the bloke up and I said, "Mate, can I ask why you blokes are always in a hurry? They always seem to have trucks that are a little bit faster. Like, you know, trucks are meant to be speed limited, Luke. And I've got brand new drive tyres. So that means generally I'm doing 100, maybe 100 and a half or 101. So I'm not sitting back at 90 or 95, dawdling along, and this bloke's doing 100 and he wants to get past." And I said, "Mate, the way it works is that if you want to come round, you sit back and you call the truck in front. Now, you can't miss my truck day or night. It's got the name on the back. You call up, copy the blue taut liner going southbound, mate. Can you give me a call when there's a space?"
Yeah.
So, if you didn't know he's there, then you do. You've made communication, and normally you say, "Righto, mate, there's a big gap here. I'll back off and give you a hand."
Right.
But unfortunately, these blokes don't, and I've had it twice where they just pulled out and overtaken when really you could not see enough distance to pass in a car, and yet they're often in a B-double or a road train of some combination. And once they get out there, you've got no option. If someone comes the other way, one of you has got to back off or you're going to die. And this bloke said, "Oh, you Aussie," he said, "you be quiet." Now, again, I understand that some of them don't have the radio on because they cop a fair bit of abuse. And that only makes it worse. But if they don't understand the rules, and as you said, those drivers in New Zealand, they were found to have been fraudulently given a licence, and we know that in Australia similar things did happen. We had one in Western Australia, and I think the other was in South Australia, where people were virtually selling the licences to those from their own country, wherever they came from. None of us wants to die on the road. We're going to come to that in a minute. That's just happened again and again and far too often. But if we can't get them properly trained and tested, and we know so many have already got through the loops, whether they had a mate or they cheated, we don't know. We see by their actions on the road that they don't understand our etiquette, I suppose. It's not a law, but it is about being safe and about getting the job done safely. So how do we get that message to them, Luke? And I have a question to any Indian driver who's suffered and doesn't understand. How can we help them understand, and how can we make it better? Because they're all here. There's more coming. We're never going to change the fact for the ones that are already out there, unfortunately. But how can we make it better for the rest and for every single truck driver on the road?
Okay. Now, Josh, I'm going to throw to you in a second, but I just want to say that there was a huge Indian drivers rally at a Sikh temple in Auckland. It was last weekend. And they were protesting the license cancellations. Now, a spokesperson from the Indian drivers said they're claiming that they are either being treated unfairly or have been scammed after moving to New Zealand from the UAE to work after 2022 when the borders reopen. Now, providing false information as part of a driver's license application is punishable in New Zealand by a fine of up to $750. Do you know what the fine in Australia is? And Josh, what do you make of all of this?
Look, I completely agree with everything Rod said. Now, I don't begrudge anyone for coming to this country to live and work. My father's family came over from Germany after the Second World War, and part of their repatriation was that they had to bring something to Australia to benefit the country at the time.
Yep.
As we know, there was obviously a lot of death and destruction that happened after the war. My grandfather came over here as an engineer. He had to prove all of his qualifications. He did all that. That was in writing. It was trade tested and everything like that.
Yeah.
I don't understand how we still aren't at that level. I don't think it's wholly and solely on drivers with employment agencies or current employers. One of the things I spoke about at an ATA conference was that employees need to be honest with their employer and employers need to be honest with their employees. Now, if that means that if you want to come here from another country and you might have driven, let's say, a heavy, rigid vehicle overseas, now, if you come to Australia, you should be obligated to drive that heavy vehicle for no less than, let's say 12 months as a round figure, so that your employer can prove that you are safe and competent and all the other things needed to be a driver. There is some companies that do that. I got talking to an Indian driver up in Sydney one day when I was getting tyres changed. Now, when he came here, the company he works for, he had to do 12 months in a rigid. He then had to do 12 months in a single semi-trailer, and then he's finally got his B double licence. Now, as employers, I can't understand how you wouldn't be making sure your drivers are doing that, because if you put someone out on the road, and as we've seen, if you have an accident, 9 times out of 10, you aren't going to walk away from, something with a few nicks and scratches. You're going to wind up with a serious injury or unfortunately worse. I can't understand as an employee, you wouldn't put your hand up and say, well, if this is what you're going to force me to do, I will find another job. Yes, I understand it's hard that, they might not have a choice in the matter. They might be locked in with an employment agency to go and do a certain thing. But that's why we have these options. You can make a phone call. You can ring places like the NHVR and have a conversation with them about, what is going on. You do have that option. The biggest thing with that for those foreign drivers is the language barrier. They don't necessarily completely understand how to read and write English 100%. And I would be exactly the same way if I had to go to their country. It would be very daunting, not knowing the rules, not knowing the laws, and not knowing where to go. The senior drivers from overseas should be passing on the information that they know and experiences they've had, and that would make everybody safer on the road. no one wants to go to work and not come home. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we see it all too often. The freight tasks that we get dealt with sometimes are very ridiculous. One thing that I was going to talk about was overnight express post. You know, like if you want a parcel, that's all well and good, but someone's got to load it and drive it and deliver it. If they're doing it for overnight delivery for $5 per package, you know, the rate is already not where it needs to be. You know, if it takes, it's sad to see, but if everyone just took a breath and took a step back and analysed the situation a little bit better, it would be better for everyone.
Yeah, and a good time for you to mention that because Christmas is just around the corner and Australia Post is absolutely inundated with parcels. But it's the express stuff that worries me. I mean, how do you get something from Sydney to Townsville overnight? It boggles my brain, Rod.
And unfortunately, most people don't know, and certainly Sydney to Townsville is going to be on a plane if that's going to be overnight, Luke, and they're going to charge accordingly. But a lot of what is meant to be air freight ends up on trucks. And it's always been the case. The public don't know it. The public pay a premium to have it delivered overnight, and they think it's gone to the airport and arrived there in 2 hours. But some truck drivers driven all night, so another truck driver can go and deliver the parcels to a distribution centre, and another truck driver in a courier van can deliver it to your house. And they don't recognise that. It's never been something that's been made public. Because, of course, the transport company want you to pay a real high premium rate. This is overnight, mate. It's got to be there. Oh, well, we'll charge you accordingly. Then we'll go and put it on a truck and expect some truck driver to deliver it for you. So that's another side of that altogether. This time of year, people want it all delivered. It's probably going to be a bit quiet after Christmas because everyone's got what they wanted, hopefully, in time for Santa to deliver it. And we know that Santa gets a lot of help from our industry. But, mate, we go back to where we started. We all want to get home. We have to find a solution. There was a piece on one of the Facebook pages during the week. There was another major accident. Now, somebody from our industry got on Facebook and said he was absolutely ashamed to be an Australian truck driver, to listen to the rot and the rubbish and the abuse and the stupidity that went on over the UHF radio while somebody's died on the road. Now, we have logbooks, we have all these requirements, we have all these, things that contain us and all these penalties and fines. We've discussed that. But if it was you, if it was your family, as we've said, would you act that way? And yes, you can get frustrated. But to carry on like a two-bob watch, and I've got to say, I wish I could find that bloke in Melbourne at the moment who just won't shut up down there singing songs. But they destroy our option to be safe by being able to listen on the radio. We can't find them, and there's no law against it technically. It's just stupidity, and I can't understand how sitting there listening to yourself has any value whatsoever. But anyway, maybe one of those days, one of those blokes will ring in and educate us there. But if we can find a way, if we can do something positive, and I can't see anybody else is doing it. Like the associations talk about it. Look, we have a gentleman on our board in the National Road Freighters Association. He went to one of the meetings regarding these new closing the loophole legislation, and he said he's been abused, he's been given a hard time, and he knows other drivers who have come from overseas, some from India, some from other of those countries, and they are virtually told, here's what you're going to do, here's what I'm going to pay you. If you don't like it, well, I'm going to report you to the authorities and have you deported. So they've probably, as you say, paid a lot of money to get here, as it says in New Zealand. Some of them have been promised the world and cheated and then cheated when they get here. And some of them are put in such a position that they don't know there's anyone to help them. And they're told, get in that truck and be in Melbourne or Perth or somewhere in the morning. And they go off to do it. And they're told, if you don't do it, mate, I'm not going to pay you and you won't be able to feed your family. So the government has a role. We talked about the sham contracting. A lot of them are put in that position again. This is what I'm going to pay you. You get and go and do it. And if we don't do it, well, you're going home. We're going to send you back. So how do we solve all of those things, let alone the fact that some simply haven't been taught properly, do not understand the rules or the etiquette, and no one's really trying to teach them?
If there are members of the trucking profession who are of Indian origin, I'd love you to get in contact with us. Do you think this story is from the New Zealand Herald. It's a New Zealand story, but there are frustrations in Australia as well. Are they unfair accusations? Do you feel you're being unfairly targeted? And we want to hear your side of the story. So please contact us, lukebonaradioguy@gmail.com, or leave us a message, 0291289311. Josh, should there be more government regulation with the using of a UHF?
Well, back in the day when UHFs first came out on in trucks, it was illegal to have them. There was reports. I remember Sleepy, which is Barry Grimson. So he's not long passed away, only 18 months ago. Barry, when I went around to his house one night for dinner, he was telling me that back in the day, if you got caught with a UHF in your truck, you could be arrested and locked up. So
really,
we've gone from that extreme to the other, where now you could go down to anywhere that sells one, put one in your car, go and park on the side of the road and make an absolute fool of yourself just to upset people. As we know, it's hard enough being out on the road, and if you haven't experienced some sort of road rage or frustration on the road, you're obviously not paying attention to what you're doing. Rod talks about the guy in Melbourne. So I get to Wallen, which is about 30 k's, 35 k's from the start, like before you just started coming into the city. And I'll get to there, and the radio gets turned off, and it doesn't get turned back on until I've gone and done all my deliveries, all my pickups, and gotten back out to that part of the freeway again. It is hard sometimes because you do miss crucial information, whether someone's trying to report a road accident and trying to give you an easy way to get around something. It happens a lot in the city areas. We have an accident and everyone will go on the diversion road, and unfortunately everyone's in a rush and we'll have another accident on the diversion road, and before you know it, everything's locked up and you're stuck sitting in traffic, and it's only making it worse. But then to have to listen to the absolute disgusting crap that goes on the UHF, it does get very tedious after a while. I don't know that you'd ever be able to police anybody having a UHF. There's no requirement to have a radio license or anything like that, which, it's like anything. Anyone can go and buy a mobile phone, so anyone can go and buy a radio. But if people just used it for what it was for, it'd be fantastic.
Okay, well, part of the problem is it's almost impossible to catch somebody who's using a UHF in a mischievous way. But should there be more government regulation? And the government, Rod Hannafy, are probably going to say, well, we just don't have the resources to catch these people.
And that's what Josh said. In the past, it was actually CB. It was called 27 megahertz,
Citizens Band.
but it was called CB. That's right.
Citizens Band Radio.
And you had to have a license. And then in those days, when you paid a license fee, they could go and find somebody. Right. There was the chopper pilot in Sydney. But now, because we don't pay a fee to use the radio, their answer is, well, there's no money to solve it. I do know a bloke who was very much involved in the early days of UHF, and he said, they can find them. It's a bit like each radio has a certain frequency. Yes. And if they want to, they could go and find somebody, confiscate their radio, fine them for being an idiot. That'd be a good start. But yes, it's going to cost money. There's no resources there to do it. They don't really see it as a problem. Of course, it only affects us in the majority of times. Yes, we've got caravanners that we're trying to encourage, and I heard Nathan's dad say that he found it very helpful, so that was good. And we want people to have them to be able to say, right, round the corner, there's a big cow in the middle of the road, or the traffic stopped right in front of you, mate. Pull up, slow down, and you prevent accidents.
Yes.
By having them. You have access to another driver. Give me a hand. I need a hand here, mate, or can you watch the traffic for me? Or even as simple as pulling out of some sites that are on a blind corner, Luke.
Yes.
You wait for the truck to go past, you call him up, say, mate, can you let me know when there's nothing coming so I can pull out safely, instead of pulling out thinking, yep, I'm good here, and a truck comes barreling around the corner at 100 kilometres an hour that you didn't know was there. So it's as simple as that at times. And other times it can mean the difference between life and death.
Well, back in the day, there was technology, because back in the day, you needed a license to have a radio and a television. And if you didn't pay your license fee, they had vans that drove around the streets with a handheld dish type thing, and they could fine tune and they could work out who was receiving a television or radio signal that hadn't paid their license.
Can be done. We just can't get them to do it at the moment, unfortunately, Lou.
No, so the UHF, whenever you key the UHF in, it'll automatically broadcast your cell ID. So when you turn your radio on, if anyone actually turns their radio on and off and looks at the screen when it first turns on, there's 6 numbers or 7 numbers that come up.
Oh, it's a code.
That's the cell squawk. Yeah, it's the cell squawk ID of that radio. So every single radio has a different cell squawk number. So if you've got a receiver that can download that thing, and you can actually make your UHS do it, so you can talk, you know exactly who you're talking to. It'll automatically cell ID your radio, so they can, and they'll just walk up and they can figure out which radio it is. If you've got the technology to pinpoint that radio, it will give you the actual code of that radio, so they know who can do it. But obviously cost and time, like you say.
Josh, while we're lucky enough to have you here, I wanted to get your and Rod's opinion on this. It's a latest development. Rod, remember we were talking about the government's plan to reduce regional speed limits. Well, following massive public backlash, the government, this is the federal government, their proposal to reduce default regional speed limits nationally has been canned. If you have just joined us, the proposal was that the speed limit on all non-signed roads in rural areas Australia-wide would drop from 100 kilometres an hour to 70. Who wants to go first on this?
Right, I mean, okay, so yes, well, there was an option. It was 90, 80 or 70, depending on where it was. I'd never heard one word for it. Now, in road safety, particularly from our point of view, and Josh will back me up, it is so hard to get heard. We want your submissions. And then because blokes are cynical, and they have every right to be cynical, we've been through more government inquiries than I've had hot breakfast this week. We have had drivers who have made the effort to contribute, and nothing's changed. And, of course, the perfect example of that is our current HV&L review that took 8 years, millions of dollars. And, unfortunately, because blokes didn't write in, there might have been 20 of us, there might have been 30, including some associations, but there's 200,000 truck drivers. Now, if we had a group called the Knights of the Road and they were all part of that, and we could get to even a tenth of those and get 20,000 submissions into that review, they would have gone, holy shit, geez, people are serious about this. We've actually got this. But what do we have? We had 20 truck drivers and 5 associations, and every state police commissioner in Australia and every roads minister that said, oh, bloody truckies, we've got to contain them and they're bad ones. And look, we're talking about overseas drivers, Luke. There are some Aussies that I wouldn't let drive a wheelbarrow as well.
Absolutely.
We're not perfect. We don't own the road.
Yeah.
It is a lifestyle, and I've seen so many videos. There's a really terrific video on YouTube at the moment about being out on the road, of course, in the American winter, being stuck in a snowstorm and not getting home for Christmas and all that. Of course, they're on the other side of the world, so there's this winter over there. And it was just so heartfelt, mate, nearly brought a tear to my eye. But if we can't get heard, we can't get change. If all of those people who think they know better but don't have to do the job. They all tell us how we should do it, when we should sleep, where we should park, but they don't supply places to park. They don't give us flexibility like that 14-day rule. Now, that's a lockdown, hard and fast rule, and it's already meant that I've been on my way home and had to sit in a little town 3 hours from Dubbo when I had enough hours in the day, enough hours in the week, but I simply was forced to stop because of what happened 2 weeks ago. Now, if you can tell me that's road safety, I'll call you out.
Josh.
Absolutely. Completely agree with what Rod says. And the other thing, if you are driving a car and if you are out on those rural roads, whether you live there or you're a visitor through the area, you drive to the conditions. Now, if you've never been on a road before, and Rod will be the same, if I'm going in my truck and the majority of my work that I cart is steel, So every day of the week, I'm between 67.5 and 68.5 tonne every single time I have a load on my truck. Now, if I'm in an area that I've never been before, regardless of whether I'm, I have the GPS running or whether I've looked up my route to make sure there's no randomly low bridges or something in my vicinity, I'm not going to drive flat out on that road that I don't know. I will back off to 80 or 90 or 70 and make that decision consciously of where I am. I think a lot of people, and especially now getting into the holiday season, let's go somewhere we haven't been before. Okay, we'll go here. Those people, we're on holidays. We've got to get to our holiday and get set up and then we can relax. The hardest part is making sure that you get there safely and get home safely. Now, my brother works at a caravan repair place down on the south coast, and he has seen numerous times where caravans have come in for repairs and they are completely overloaded for what they can carry. Unfortunately, I think that's a shortfall of probably when they've gone to pick up the brand new van and not have it clearly explained. And one example was my brother, there was a couple, they'd gone to Adelaide, they'd been away for 3 weeks, and they came and saw my brother and said, all the back wall on the back of the van, it's all separating. So a composite van, so obviously, quite well made. My brother, he's like, oh, that's weird. I've never had a caravan with the back wall starting to break away before. Anyway, took the van in, looked all over. He'd seen that the floor had a big sag in it. So anyway, he's gone into the van and lifted up the bed as it's on a hinge. So it's got storage under the bed. Now, there was 28 boxes of wine. So 6 bottles to a box. Now, they said, but look at all this room. And my brother said, that's like a ton of weight in the back of your van. No wonder it's breaking in half. So they had no idea. Then they had to pay for the van because they overloaded it. So their insurance company sent out the information, and my brother had to write that that's what they've done. They've overloaded the van. He's not going to put his job in jeopardy to cover them on an insurance claim.
And the luckiest part of that, Josh, is they actually made it without having the van come sideways and take them clean off the road,
yeah.
Absolutely. Now, it just boggles my mind. My brother has said numerous times, if it's just you and your partner going away, don't go into the dining room and pack the 10-piece, dinner set for you and your partner to go away. Go down to Bunnings or a camping shop and get half a dozen melamine plates. Get melamine cups. You don't need to have the finest dining setting in the van if it's just you and your partner going away. And I think that's where a lot of people come unstuck, because as soon as you put your potable water on board and your grey water tank, and then you might fill your water tanks back up and not drain your grey water tanks, now that van is overloaded. Yeah. And people just they're just not trained, and you guys have talked about it. There's a lack of training, there's a lack of understanding, and I know we're talking about rural speed limits, so I sort of got off topic there, but it comes down to driving to the conditions and knowing your limitations. We all say that common sense isn't common, but I think especially when it comes to something as serious as being in operation of a motor vehicle, you should have common sense to say, well, I haven't been on this road before, I'll back off and make the conscious decision. Yes, the posted speed limit is 100, but I will do 75. It's
Yeah, no.
And that applies on any road, whether the speed limit's 100 and you want to go a little bit steady because it's raining or it's bucketing down and you can't see. You don't do 100 when it's bucketing down that far you can't see 2 feet in front of you. It's the same thing. But if they changed those limits, it would have meant that every local copper would just sit out there in the middle of the dirt and knock someone off for doing 90 when it was a 70K zone. There's not that many deaths. I'm not saying they're not important. Every single death is important, but the money they were going to spend, and it would have cost money to do an education campaign, if they actually put that onto the roads and fixed some of the things out there, and my current push at the moment is for a national road standard. After a lot of badgering, Luke, I told you about a culvert north of Dubbo. I finally got a response to that one. Vic Road still haven't come back to me on a bump on the Hume I've been asking them to fix for 12 months. TMR, I'm waiting to hear back from David Littleproud's office about all the culverts in Dalby. And honestly, I could write a 5-page list if I had a scribe in the truck so that someone could do it as we drove along. I could write a 5-page list of every severe bump from Brisbane to Melbourne. And honestly, I don't think they'd be able to fix them in 2 years, even if they said, righto, Rod, we're onto this list. Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it. I'd save 10 lives. Now, you can argue I'm full of shit, but I reckon I'd save 10 lives over the next 5 years if they took away those serious bumps and potholes. Mate, the Shepparton bypass, you come down from Shepparton. They've gone and finally done some of the holes, but they've left others that are like a foot across. Yeah. And if you're driving down the road in your car, and whether you're looking at the road, at least with a pothole, you can see it and avoid it. But if you're, sticking your fingers in your ear or changing the radio, you're still going to hit it and swerve into the car beside you. But it's the bad dips and bumps that aren't broken and people don't see, therefore they're not ready when it affects them and they swerve and they could go off the road, they could go into a truck coming the other way, and then, of course, we're going to get the blame for that. So there is so much better money to be spent on making our roads safer, and they will not recognise it as our workplace. Because as soon as they do, they've got to provide a safe workplace like every other worker in Australia has. Well, why can't we have it?
Rod and I talked about that the other day, Luke. So there's a pothole on the Violet Town Road. So right on the opposite, like it's on the there's a little channel that you drive on right before you get to Murchison. So this pothole is a reoccurring thing. Every 6 months it completely breaks away and opens up under the ground. Now, it was probably 2/3 of the way across both lanes, and they fixed that pothole. But there's a numerous amount of littler potholes before and after that channel crossing. Now they'd actually walked up and spray painted around the potholes with yellow and white spray paint while they were there doing a heavy patch repair on that massive pothole. Now, if they're willing to walk, and it wasn't 100 metres up the road, it was probably 40 metres up the road. If they've walked up and taken the time to spray paint it, why didn't they just take the time to walk up there or drive up there with the truck and put a few scoops of asphalt in the hole and fill it up? I understand where Rod comes from, that it's so frustrating to see them fix one little part but leave 5 other parts in the same vicinity with no action at all.
Look, this is great conversation, and I've got to get you back, Josh. And Rod, why don't we do a special episode as we get close to the Christmas holidays and talk more about how our roads are going to be more crowded, and probably crowded with drivers that don't drive long distances often, and how to negotiate that. And we might do something special about caravans for newcomers to caravans. What about that, Josh and Rod?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Josh Albrecht, former ATA Driver of the Year. It has been fascinating to talk to you. I've just got to do one last thing while you're both there. Rod, I sent you this during the week. And Josh, I just found it interesting. Maybe you don't. But there is a private bus company that went online advertising for drivers. And as I say, it's a private bus company. It's Busways. They are offering all sorts of incentives to try and encourage new drivers. They're obviously struggling like the trucking industry. You get a company-issued Opal card, comprehensive paid training program, ongoing training, overtime opportunities, career progression opportunities, access to Busways fitness passport program, access to salary packaging options such as novated leasing, an employee assistance program, a supportive work environment with stable employment in a secure industry, flexible shift work to promote a healthy work-life balance. This is all online. But then they had something else. If you have the qualifications of an MRHR license, if you currently have a working with children check and a current driver authority, you get a $6,000 sign-on bonus.
Wow.
Rod, I sent you this during the week. Did you see it?
No, I didn't, mate. No, I didn't. But it's a big thing in the States. Some of them offer up to $10,000 to $12,000. Park your truck, come and work for us. That's how desperate they can be. Yes, they have some of the same problems. And as you say, in the bus industry, our local bloke, every time I call him up, he says, "Oh, coming to drive for me this week?" Sorry, no, I want something else. But it's a concern, and it's going that way that you have to entice people. Now, our biggest flaw as an industry is that years ago, if you wanted drivers, you went and stole them from somebody else. You didn't take young people on and teach them. Some did come through. There were some really good programs that some companies ran. But it was, you turn up with 5 years experience. And we've had people ring in, Luke, "Oh, where do I get 5 years experience if no one will give me a go?" And because we didn't have an apprenticeship, because companies were too tightly pushed even then to consider the cost of training someone so we'd have drivers in the future, this is where we're heading now.
Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. Two things. I think I might need to become a bus driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing with being a bus driver too is that freight that you load, or you don't even load it. They load themselves, they restrain themselves, they unrestrain themselves, and unload themselves. It's a perfect job for a driver. You don't have to do anything extra. But
walk on, walk off freight.
That's right. Yep. No muster dogs needed. No anything. Just keep an eye on the seatbelt light.
No forklift.
No, that's right. And if they're being rowdy, kick them off the bus. I don't see how without those kind of incentives that people can get people on board. We see it in other industries down here in Victoria for at the moment. There's an $8,000 sign-on bonus to become a prison officer. When they're dangling that so-called carrot, it's a very tempting prospect for people. The only other thing that I'd like to do is like what Rod does at the end about, something to think about. I think that if you're willing to whinge about a problem, you should be willing to put your hand up and help fix the problem. Everyone can get online and say, "Oh, this is bad." But if you don't have an idea or a way or if you're not going to put your voice up to be heard and help fix it, don't whinge about it, because you're not doing anything to help.
Okay, so long as you don't lower the qualifications, which they did with teachers in New South Wales a few years ago, instead of offering more money because teachers were leaving the profession, they lowered the HSC mark to get into uni, and we got shit teachers.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I know. So don't compromise the qualifications, raise them if anything, but if you can, a cash incentive, $6,000 to sign on. So there you are. Hey, listen, Josh, you have been a star. It's been great to meet you. And can we get you back on?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Josh Albrecht. Rod, as we said at the beginning of today's Truckie Tuesday, there was a terrible, terrible accident, and a young father of 4 was killed in a crash in the state's central west, New South Wales, after the B-double he was driving crashed and it burst into flames. The driver who died, his name was Kurt Finnerty, who was a well-known local truck driver, and he died last Thursday afternoon after his shift driving a B-double across the state turned really bad. And in a tragic twist, Mr. Finnerty, who comes from a long line of truck drivers, also lost his grandfather in a crash while on the job. Can you believe this? Now, one of our listeners...
Terrible.
It's just terrible. And one of our listeners is Brad. And Brad messaged us on Friday. Now, Kurt was his best friend, and he's just obviously distraught by all of this, but he wanted to join us, Rod, for a chat and to talk to us about the impact of losing his mate Kurt and the effect that that's had on his community. And g'day, Brad. It's Luke and Rod here. Thanks for your time, and we're both so sorry for your loss.
Yeah, no, it's all good, and I still can't believe what happened.
My understanding, they had a newborn baby as well just recently, mate, and another truck driver. Yeah, exactly. So, and another truck driver did pull up and try and help and put the fire out, but was unable to. So, mate, it's a sad thing all around. I had a lot of people call me to say that there was a 4-death accident. Now, it seems there were 2 separate accidents out on the road, and I think there was some confusion on the media. There was a separate accident where car occupants were killed, and that was a completely separate incident to Kurt's. Kurt's was a single vehicle accident. He was in a B-double. He was coming out of Sydney, I believe, heading out towards Dubbo, as they say, near Ballymore there. And he's gone off the road and the truck's burst into flames. The other driver couldn't put the fire out, couldn't get him out. So it's a terrible thing to have happen.
Yeah, his steer tyre blew out, which actually caused the crash.
Ah, right. Okay. So they found that out since. And some of those things you don't know when it's on the side of the road and there's a tragedy, but a tyre blowout on the steer can be a critical thing, as we all know.
Yeah.
It's terrible that it's taken his life, mate.
Yeah. And like, I was on the phone to him Wednesday night for an hour, having a good old chat, as we usually do, and just heard the news Thursday, 4 o'clock, and it was just like, the world came crashing down. It's like, how does that happen? Like, you're only on the phone to him less than 12 hours ago.
Yep.
Tell us about you, mate. Please tell us about Kurt Finnerty.
I met him through his sister. Me and his sister in the same class in school, like all the way through school and that. And yeah, he was a top bloke and really, really down to earth and done anything for anyone. If you needed a hand changing a tyre on a truck, he was the first one to pull over and give you a hand and everything, and like no questions asked. Yeah, he just done anything for anyone. And yeah, I'm just lost and emotional and same as everyone else is. And
yeah, so a young bloke with a young family, it's certainly going to be very hard on his wife and children. Years ago, there was a Dubbo Drivers Club had a death benefit. As much as no one wants to have one, let's hope that he had enough insurance and that for the family, because there is really no one there to help families like that. Like the community, hopefully, will rally round and support the family.
There is a GoFundMe page at the moment happening and everything, and like it's getting up there quickly for him, but it doesn't bring back Kurt. No,
it certainly doesn't. It doesn't bring back a husband or a father to those children, or a mate to you, and obviously all others of his family.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, mate, where you don't know whether there was something on the road. There could have been something on the road that's caused the tyre to blow.
Yep.
It could have been a pothole that he hit, 2 weeks ago that put a fracture in it, and you don't know. And it's one of those things that you can't control. It's a critical thing. And look, Luke, in the past we have spoken, there are a few companies now that operate twin steer trucks. So you actually have 2 steer axles for exactly that reason, because we know blown steer tyres can be critical, can be a virtual life-defining event. So, mate, all I can say is I'm terribly sorry for your loss, that I hope that people get behind and support the page, that the family rallies round, and that you get over it and understand, mate, that you recognise the good that he did in his life, and that, obviously he's now in what some would say is a better, safer place. But if only that, it could have been prevented in some way. But yes, and this time of year too, eh?
And to make it worse, that he pulled up in Ballina to see his sister and mum on Monday Arvo, and his mum is going into hospital because she's got her own health problems on. She's currently fighting brain cancer at the moment.
Goodness me.
Oh, dear. Tell me, Brad, what's Kurt's community? And how can we, through this podcast, help? Tell us about the GoFundMe page.
His sister started it on Friday morning. Trucking with CJ got on board, and she donated $1,000 to it, and she's spread it around her content page and everything. And she's really upset because she's really, really good friends with Kurt's missus. She met him 3 years ago at the Casino Truck Show and just fell in love with them all. And it's just...
So where's Kurt from?
He's from Bathurst. He lives in Bathurst, New South Wales.
Okay, I know the area very well. So does Kelsey. And I understand that he actually lost his grandfather, who was a truckie, as well. And his grandfather died in a crash. So he comes from a long line of truckies. And he's certainly going to be sorely missed in the trucking community. Look, the GoFundMe, we'll put the link to that GoFundMe page on our site. And please, mate, can you pass on from me and Rod and Kelsey our deepest love and sympathy?
Yeah, we'll do. It's left a hole in a lot of lives. Like, even my cousin was working with Kurt 12 months ago in WA in the mines, and when I rang my cousin about it, he was like, just broke down in tears, like he didn't believe it and everything. I was like, no, man, unfortunately it's true what happened, and I wish it never happened.
I'd certainly urge people who can help do it. It's something where in the industry in the past there was a group called industry help sort of thing, and they would get in and make sure that the family was looked after. There's nothing really available like that now, which is really sad for people that find themselves in that situation. We know that everybody looks at things, it's not going to happen to me, but it's happened and it's critical and it's going to have an enormous impact. And, mate, if you need help too, don't. I'm sure you'll have someone to reach out to talk to because, mate, if you carry it and affects you as well, that's no good. So make sure that you stay safe as well, mate.
Yeah, I was driving when I found the news out and I just pulled over. I was like, no, I can't drive anymore. I just pulled over and broke down and,
Understand. Sorry to hear that, but you did the right thing, mate.
Yep, and being a truck driver and hearing about all truck crashes all the time, it hurts and everything, but having one of your best friends pass away in a truck crash, it's another level.
Yeah, too close, eh?
Yeah.
Brad, we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much for your time and so sorry.
No, thank you for that.
The driver who pulled up to help, he would have been just as much affected, mate, because he would have got there to the scene and thought, fire, I believe he used a number of extinguishers to try. So he'd be pretty shattered knowing that the bloke was in the cab. So I hope that he, is recognised for trying to help, but also gets help if he needs it, because you can imagine how traumatic that would be, Luke. To be there, to be virtually standing there knowing there's nothing you can do and running out of fire extinguishers and knowing the bloke's in the cab, that would have been a terrible thing to go through.
Jesus. So, and it's a reminder, isn't it, how many truckies are actually first responders?
Yes. I've got to say there was a program started a little while ago, and I know a bloke who turned up on an accident in the middle of nowhere. No phone service, and look, that came up in a phone conversation or a radio conversation the other day about, having phone service. Now, luckily, somebody might have been aware there, but if we don't have phone service on the highway and you come on that, how do you get help, Luke? If we need a phone service that at least covers our major highways, and we don't have that. And I've actually said, I wrote to the Ombudsman and I said, people's lives are at risk, because I now cannot ring emergency services. Some will say you can get through on emergency, depends on where you are. Maybe we need to look at that, Luke, so we can make people aware of what the rules are or what is available when you're out somewhere out of service. Is it true you can ring and get service? But if we can't report a crash, how can we help someone and get help to them that might save their lives, mate? And we can't do that if you can't ring up. Then you're back to the UHF. Calling up to let other truckies know, calling up to see if there's someone listening in a farm or that's got a phone and has access to get somebody out there, because that situation where it happened, look, they might not have made a difference had they been there quicker. And then there's all those ifs, isn't there, Luke? If this, if that, if he, did this, and you're going to go through all of those things. The family's going to go through all of that. And, mate, it's just a terribly sad situation. And if we can do one thing, as I've said to you, Luke, you've given me a voice to get to people, generally outside the industry, that we wouldn't normally touch. We talked about being heard, because not one truck driver I know wants to go to work to break the law, to put anybody else at risk, and yet we are human. We do make mistakes. These things happen. It's terrible and it's tragic when they do, but every one of us could do one thing. Whether it's back off a little bit, whether it's have a bit of empathy for a truck driver, whether it's report a pothole, whether it's contribute to an association or a group, if everybody did one little thing, then, mate, we could save more lives. And I think that in these circumstances where these things happen, we can't bring him back. We can't stop what's happened from happening, but we might be able to stop it happening to somebody else if we make that little bit of effort, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
Look, that's a good note to finish on, Rod. Thank you so much again, Truckie Tuesday. Thank you for introducing us to Josh Albrecht. And once again, if you want to know where the Kurt Finity GoFundMe link is, Kelsey will put that on our details. And if you can help, please do. A young family. And just so bloody tragic. Rod Hannafy, we'll talk again soon. Thank you for that.
We will, mate. Safe travelling to all out there, and stay safe, eh?
So thank you once again for listening to what we think is episode 73 of Bonafide with me, Luke Boner, and the millennial who puts it all together. We will talk very, very soon. Please keep your messages coming. Email us. Write to us. Leave voice messages on 0291289311 so we can play them. And here's an observation for the week, millennial. Hairdressers always leave hair on the floor. You go to a mechanic, There's always oil on the floor. What's wrong with bakes? What's your problem?
Bye.
Bye. All right, look, the episode's done, but before you pull the keys out of the ignition or turn off the lights, here's the dare. Stop dreaming about that holiday and actually enter for the chance to win one. NatureBee is giving away 20 grand of travel. Anywhere you want. Bali, Broome, Barcelona, it doesn't matter. If it's under 20K, you keep the change. Spend $79.90 on NatureBee products and you're in the running. It's just that easy. So go on, hit the link in the notes or head to naturebee.com, read the T's and C's, and let's see where you end up.